Von Braun's giant machine seems to function perfectly. Another 102 hours till the big moment. 96 hours after the launch, the control center at Houston gives the go-ahead for the moon landing. The lunar module is called Eagle.
The Eagle has wings.
Countdown to the landing. Suddenly, a computer alarm sounds. The system is overloaded and about to crash. The astronauts switch to manual control. Experienced astronaut Neil Armstrong's pulse jumps to 160 beats a minute. Then, the moment of truth. The lunar module sets down softly in the Sea of Tranquility.
The Eagle has landed.
After a flight lasting 109 hours, 24 minutes and 20 seconds, the time has come. Neil Armstrong steps onto the dusty surface of the moon and speaks his famous line.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
A great moment in the life of the rocket-obsessed Wernher von Braun. The world holds its breath. The Apollo 11 mission becomes the greatest media spectacle of all time. 500 million people watch the astronauts on TV, hoping they'll return safely to Earth. Cheers and flag waving at Houston on the successful completion of the Apollo 11 mission. In Huntsville, too, the mood is ecstatic. Wernher von Braun is carried through the streets of Rocket City by jubilant fans. A beaming hero. His dreams fulfilled at the pinnacle of his career. Von Braun has long had new goals in his sights. A small step or a big one, it's all the same to von Braun. He sees the step on the moon as just a first step into space, a stepping stone to the next destination. He wants to go farther, to Mars.
Wernher von Braun was not really all that bothered about the moon. His real obsession was Mars. For us, the moon was always of secondary interest because there is not much mankind can do with it. It has no long-term significance for settlement, etc. And for von Braun, even as a boy, Mars was the lodestar.
Hence the decision to move to NASA headquarters in Washington, where he hopes to be better placed to manage his visions for Mars.
My friends, there was dancing here in the streets of Huntsville when our first satellite orbited the Earth. And there was dancing again when the first Americans landed on the moon. I'd like to ask you, don't hang up your dancing slippers.
You know, when he climbed up, they lifted him up on their shoulders and took him around the square. I just had a feeling that things would not be the same.
In 1970, von Braun leaves Rocket City forever. The decision to go to Washington proves a mistake. The luck that has always accompanied him seems to be running out. His dreams are no longer in tune with the times. President Nixon is embroiled in the Watergate affair and has other things on his mind than Mars expeditions. Von Braun is at headquarters, but has no funding, no options, and no lobby.
The headquarters environment is entirely different from having a field center. You have your own airplane. You have 5,000 people working for you. You are the boss And you know, it's when you go to Washington, it's a different situation. The bureaucracy in Washington is known to smother good minds, to just totally absorb every brain cell you've got.
He was not invited to meetings. He was forbidden to testify in Congress. You know, here's your strongest proponent, your best witness, and you don't let him go testify.
The German visionary's lucky star is fading. A NASA manager says he walked through the buildings with an air of death about him. People gradually stopped talking to him in the corridor, like a conductor suddenly left with no orchestra. He quits NASA in 1972. 2 years later, doctors diagnose cancer.
The last pictures of him were dreadful. He looked a broken man. He couldn't accept the fact that he was no longer needed, that he'd been sidelined. A case of the Moor has done his duty, the Moor can go.
Nach der alten Methode, der Moor hat seine Schuldigkeit getan.
Wernher von Braun died near Washington in summer 1977. He was 65 years old. When he arrived in provincial Huntsville, he was unknown. When he left 20 years later, he was an international celebrity. A few traces still exist. In the garden of the family home, a moss-covered monument of reinforced concrete, the only private bunker for miles around, paid for by the US Army during the Cuban crisis. At the NASA Space Flight Center, a heavy bronze bust reminds staff daily of the blue-blooded rocket pioneer who became the champion of 20th century space exploration. And beside the expressway, the moon rocket, full scale and in launch position. His masterpiece.
Okay. Okay. Eagle looking great. Roger, 1202, we copy you. 35 degrees.